Hello and welcome to my tutorial video of installation of fully integrated Android head unit into Subaru Outback 2016. In this video, I will answer the following questions. Why I wanted to replace my Subaru head unit. Then what components you would need to replace the head unit. And finally, how. First, let's discuss why I wanted to replace my Subaru head unit in the first place. Let me start with the positive things I can say about it. For one, it's the voice clarity when I speak over the Bluetooth. I was driving my car in various noisy environments, and honestly, it's hard to remember a time when a person on another end of the phone could not hear me. The second one is ability to play my music over Bluetooth audio. It plays no problem, and it provides additional text info about the tracks. No problem registering screen touches in cold weather when wearing gloves. And that's about it. And now let's go to what I don't like about this head unit. Virtually everything else. It is slow by modern standards. It frequently disconnects from my cell phone Bluetooth, which requires deleting the Bluetooth connection, reconnecting, and importing my phone book again. Using the phone book is a pain, and it does not update my contacts automatically when a new contact is added to my phone book. Outdated and unfriendly Subaru software, AHA, Pandora, and Starlink that weren't useful when the car was brand new and now are completely outdated and unusable after just a few years. There's no ability to install any additional apps or software. And finally, no integrated GPS navigation in 6.2-inch model and Subaru proprietary navigation software in the 7-inch model with no ability to install modern Google Maps and so on. Now, when I explained why I wanted to replace the head unit, let's go over the components you would need. The first component is obvious. It's a new aftermarket head unit. In my case, I decided to go with this Atoto S8 Ultra, which is a full Android device. Of course, you can choose any other head unit, such as from Panasonic or Sony or Kenwood. However, to the best of my knowledge, none of these devices come with full Android capabilities. A second component is no less important. It's a wired interface which will be used to connect your aftermarket head unit to the Subaru wiring harness. Subaru wiring harness is very complex, and although it is possible to tap into it, it is much easier to use the aftermarket interface. A third component is a dash kit. The dash kit is essentially a plastic cover which will be covering the hole which will be left after you remove the old Subaru system. The last but not least component is the USB interface, which will be used to retain the USB ports in my Outback 2016. Finally, although it is not a component which is required, strictly speaking, this may be a very useful thing to purchase along with all the components I mentioned before. This fastener removal kit. It will make your job much easier, and it will not leave marks on the dashboard when you are taking it apart. Now, when I went over the components, let's go and unpack them and see what they can and cannot do. Let's start with the aftermarket head unit. Let me unpack it and show you the content. In the box, you will find a couple of USB ports, the Wi-Fi antenna, 4G antenna, GPS antenna, the wiring harness, a couple of metal brackets, the bezel, the microphone, a couple of plastic screen protectors, manuals, and the unit itself. For the wired interface, you would need to go with this Crux SWRSU-38C interface.
It is available from Crutchfield in both United States and in Canada, and it is specifically designed for Subaru Outback and Legacy 2015, 16 and 17 models. And the box includes the manual, the steering wheel control interface with its cable, the wiring interface, and the antenna interface.
Please note that if your Subaru model is different from Outback or Legacy 2015, 2016 or 17, you would need to find a different vehicle integration interface.
For the dashboard kit, I decided to go with this Scosche SWRSU-38C dash kit. This dash kit comes with the plastic cover, its own metal brackets, the manual, and even additional single DIN enclosure, which I will not be using because my unit is a double DIN unit. The USB interface from Access model number AX-SUBUSB2 is specifically designed for Subaru Outback and Legacy 2015 and 16 with 6.2-inch display. If you happen to have a model with the 7-inch display, this interface will not work for you, unfortunately. We went over the components we will need to install our aftermarket head unit. Now let's go over how we're going to do that.
The first part is easy. We need to connect the wiring harness of the new head unit to the vehicle integration interface. You can use mechanical couplers, solder seal wire connectors, or simply soldering the wires of the two, whichever method you prefer.
My most preferred method is to splice the wires with soldering. Keep in mind that in order to solder wires, you will need to have some skills of working with soldering iron. When preparing for soldering your wires, please do not forget about heat shrinking tubing. You will not be able to put your heat shrinking tubing on after you solder the wires together. I always make that mistake, and I regret that I have to cut the wires and resolder them again after I've done it.
In the interest of time, I will omit the soldering process itself, which is pretty straightforward. Here's the result of the harness and the integrated interface soldered together. And now with the heat shrinking tubing in.
So now we've done the easy part. We've spliced the wiring harness of the aftermarket unit with the wire adapter, and hopefully it will be able to give us the ability to connect the aftermarket unit with the connectors of the Subaru OEM connectors. That's the easy part. If you're good with soldering, if you're not good with soldering, you could have used any mechanical connectors to connect. It's still going to be okay. I just prefer soldering.
I think this is a good time to stop and to conclude the first part of the installation video. The next part is to follow.